Hey guys, welcome back to another On the Sensors How to Destiny series video. Got something a little bit different for you today. So I don't have the full crew with me here. We're not going to have our normal, open dialogue discussion, various topics. So today's a little bit different. I've actually got a deck overview for you, and I think it's something that we're going to try to do. We're going to try to have everyone from the crew, do their own video. Polly, Drac, Duncan, and 86 will each, do one maybe on one of their favorite decks or something new they're working on. But I've got mine for you here today, and sort of a casual deck, but as you'll see here in just a minute. But it really helps to, I think, explain, why certain cards are included in the deck, how everything fits together, what the win condition is, how I think about deck building, how I group things as far as, ramp and removal and, sort of tech cards or damage out of hand. And so, it all sort of came together, right? It was based on two characters I really wanted to play together with their recent point reductions and the leftover 5 points, and then how it all just sort of came together after that. So I hope you enjoy it, and if you have any questions or suggestions in the future, please let us know. So yeah, thanks, and without further ado, here it is. All right, let's dive in. So as I mentioned, this is a new deck that I've been toying around with. And I'll just open by saying it is not the best deck, but it is really fun when it works. So we've got Commander Pyre, FN, and a Jawa. And the battlefield is Perimeter Outpost. And Perimeter Outpost, for those of you who might not know, it says select only if your team has two or more red characters. Power action, gain two actions, then give control of this battlefield to an opponent. So it's basically action cheating. We got we meet the requirements here, right, with FN and Pyre, and so this is a no-brainer. And so, what inspired me to play this was I really wanted to play Pyre when he was reduced. So he's printed at 1114, but he was reduced to 13 Elite. And FN was printed at 1013, but he was reduced to 12 Elite. So that's 25 points running both of these guys together, both Elite, and that leaves me with 5 points. So I thought, you know what? I like a good Jawa. Jawas are interesting because they let you, they basically can gain you an extra resource per round. With the way that they allow you to, when you tap the Jawa, you can play a gray card, reducing its cost, a gray neutral card from your hand, reducing its cost by 1. So we'll talk a little bit more about that, some specific examples of how that really comes into play. But anyway, I know in previous videos we've talked about deck building, and so this is just, this is one way that I really wanted to play FN. Since he was reduced, I really wanted to play Pyre, and I had some leftover points, so I threw a Jawa in there. And so now what I want to show you is some of the cards I threw in here, and I'll explain why I chose them. And again, just want to preface it by saying, it's a fun deck. It's not going to go and win you a tournament or anything like that, but it was fun to make, and I think especially for newer players out there, it will really help you understand, why it was made in the way that it was, right? It might not be the top deck, but you're at least going to see what this deck wants to do. It's very obvious what it wants to do and what its win condition would be. So the first thing I want to show you is actually the weapons. So FN's got a really awesome power action. So when you've got a weapon on him, you can power action him to roll one of his weapon dice into your pool, resolve it, or remove it. Right, so you basically get an extra resolution per round for one of his weapons, which is fantastic. So, and because I've got this Jawa, again, just sort of haphazardly had this at least left over 5 points, and so I thought I'm going to throw a Jawa in there. So actually, when I first started building this, I thought, you know what, I'm going to try for just gray weapons, only gray weapons. And so with that in mind, we've got a Grievance Striker, which is gray neutral, two Sonic Detonators, which are gray neutral, two, I bet you haven't seen this card in a while, two Electro Swords, again, gray neutral. And of course, you have to, if you're playing Pyre, you can't play Pyre without his blaster, right? This is not gray, but I still think it's helpful. It can take control of the battlefield, which we'll talk about that in here in a little bit. But basically, and it doesn't have that many weapons, right? That is one downside of the deck. But you can hard mulligan for one of these gray weapons early on, and then with FN's after effect, right after setup, you can look at the top 4 cards of your deck, and you may reveal a weapon from among those top 4 cards and put one of those weapons into your hand. So you really increase your chances of getting a weapon by doing that, and like I said, by a hard mulliganing for a weapon. So this is this is the weapon package. Like I said, it's not that many, but man, if you can get sonic detonators out, early, or even the electro sword, these things can really be devastating. So the sonic detonators, they come into play with 6 resources on them. If you get the special, you can remove any number of those resources to deal 2 damage to that many characters. So it's just fantastic splash damage. And you can, if you get it out early, like I said, you can potentially get 2 resolutions of it with FN's power action, which is really nice. So yeah, let's move on to. So again, this specific deck, it wanted gray weapons because of the Jawa and being able to get them out for cheaper. Now, as far as the way I think about decks, obviously with FN, you have to think about weapons. Now, other ways I think about deck building would be ramp. Right, so I'm going to set these guys off to the side here. And the next sort of, grouping of cards I want to talk about would be the ramp cards. All right, so we've got fresh supplies, so 2 copies of that, and merchant freighter, 2 merchant freighters, and a small battles 1. So what's nice about the merchant freighters, if you've got a Jawa, is you can tap that Jawa and play this merchant freighter for free. All right, so that's actually gaining you a resource because you didn't actually pay for the freighter. So that's always nice. And because of a lot of the battlefield controlling cards, or cards that let you take control of the battlefield, fresh supplies is more often than not, it's online. So fresh supplies gains you a resource if you control the battlefield. So we'll talk about some of those take control of the battlefield cards here in a second, but you've got that. And then small battles 1 is just a really great card. Resolve one of your red dice showing a value of 1 without removing it from your pool. So if you roll at $1, you resolve it without removing it, and then you can resolve it again, essentially netting you $2 over the course of 2 actions. So, when I build decks, like I said, I think of things in groupings, right? In this particular deck, I thought about weapons and then ramp. And so let's set these off here. And next, let's talk about removal. So there's really not a whole lot of removal in here. So, but we'll talk about it. So we've got 1 best defense, 1 near miss, and you'll notice there's actually a few gray removals in here because they work with the Jawa. We've got 2 measure for measures, 2 harmless tricks, 2 riot shields, and 2 VPDs, 2 Viper probe droids. So of course, near miss, because we've got 2 troopers here, 2 characters that share a subtype. Near miss is really good. Tap the Jawa, you play near miss for free, as long as these 2 guys are still alive. Flank would also be a good one, potentially. You have to be careful though. If you're going to exhaust the Jawa to play your flank for free, you have to still make sure you have more ready characters than the opponent. Harmless trick is good. So typically when I play this deck, I know people can be tempted to go for the Jawa first, and it really is not a bad idea. The Jawa can really add a ton of value to this deck, so it's not a bad idea to go for the Jawa. But if people don't go for the Jawa, because they're worried about FN, FN really only has 9 health, and so if you're going to sink 5 into the Jawa, a lot of times you might as well just sink that 5 into FN, right? And then he's basically more than halfway dead. So I think that's the dilemma sometimes for my opponents, is they're not sure who to go for. If they do kill my Jawa early, it does hurt, but it's not the end of the world. So anyway, what I'm trying to say here is that harmless trick, more often than not, is online most of the time. So harmless trick says spot a gray character to remove a die. So again, I can tap my Jawa, play this card for free. Really nice. Of course, the riot shield, because they're both troopers, instead of just blocking 2, you pay 1, and this can block 3. And riot shields are really good because, I was talking to Duncan about this recently, and it's a nice form of mitigation because you don't lose tempo. You play it, and you take damage later on in future actions, and then you simply pop it off, and you can continue playing, right? You don't have to. It's not like a typical removal card where you have to, dedicate an entire action to removing a die. So riot shield is just a classic removal, and it's really good on troopers. Of course, we've got measure for measure. Remove a trooper die. Remove one of your trooper dice to remove one of any one of your opponent's dice is obviously really good. If you've got a blank on, Pyre, or you've got his 2 for one side and you can't pay for it. BPD is of course just absolutely critical in any red villain deck. That's gonna be really helpful. Keeps your tempo as well because it's an after effect. You can pay 1 to remove, or pay 1 per damage die to remove any number, and it's still your turn, right? It comes back to you, and it's still your action. And then best defense. I don't like this one as much, but there's not a whole lot of multi-die removal in here, and so it's really nice if maybe Pyre's got a riot shield on him, and you can just put the best defense right on the riot shield. But in a pinch, typically I'm resolving, or I'm playing this and I'm putting the 3 damage into Pyre. It also just depends on the play state. So next we've got let's talk about the take control of the battlefield cards. So we've got offensive position. So this is a nice card. It says if an opponent removed one of your red dice during their last turn, you get to roll that die back into your pool and take control of the battlefield. So even if your opponent did not remove one of your red dice, you can still play this to take control of the battlefield. And we'll talk about how that's, why that's important here in a second. So of course, we're playing Pyre. Probably should have mentioned this way earlier, but Pyre's after effect, or his passive, I should say, is anytime Pyre takes Pyre's controller, right, which would be you, takes control of the battlefield or claims the battlefield, Pyre does 1 indirect damage to his opponent. And so taking control of the battlefield is going to net you a lot of just damage out of hand, or just dice related damage. And so of course you've got cards like Seizing Territory is critical. Spotted Trooper to take control of the battlefield. And it's got Ambush, and that one is also 0 cost. Both of these guys are troopers. This is a great card to have in your hand. At the end of the round, your opponent claims, they think, oh yeah, I'm going to get this awesome action cheating battlefield. Nope. I've got, that card in my hand. I'm going to actually take that back, and then I'm going to get to go first in the next round. Also, Taking Charge. All right, this is obviously a critical card. That one actually costs 1. Doesn't have a spot requirement, but it does cost 1. If you already control the battlefield, you can use it to remove a die. If you do not control the battlefield, you can take control of it and then re-roll a die. And it does have Ambush. And lastly, we've got Extermination Order. That it costs 3, so it's quite expensive. It costs 3, but it does 3 indirect damage. And if you can spot, actually, I'll just read it to you. So spot a trooper, a red trooper, both of them are red troopers, to deal 3 indirect damage to an opponent. Then spot a leader, which Pyre is, to gain 2 resources. So in a perfect world, you have to spend the 3 on it. You have to have 3, but you're getting 2 back if Pyre is still alive. And so you're basically doing 3 indirect damage for 1 resource, which is pretty good. And of course, we've got Cruel Methods. So Cruel Methods does 1 damage to the attached character anytime you claim the battlefield or take control of the battlefield. So that is just a fantastic card to run with Pyre. Anytime you see Pyre, you're typically going to see all these battlefield controlling cards and Cruel Methods. So that's just sort of showing you the deck, how I think about deck building. Obviously with the Jawa, we've got some gray stuff in here, and that's really how this whole idea started. Was all right, I want to play Pyre, I want to play FN. Here's my Jawa, so I'm going to play some gray weapons. So early in the game, if I'm not up against a super aggressive deck, I will, let's just say I draw Sonic Detonators. I'm just going to spend my 2 resources immediately, tap the Jawa, and then play like Sonic Detonators for $2 rather than 3, right? Getting a discount of 1 with the Jawa. And so I'll immediately get that out there on the table, or even an Electro Sword if I have one, or a Grievance Striker. Any of those gray weapons, I am very happy to play turn 1, even leaving myself with no money, if I'm not against an aggressive deck. Because the sooner you get those weapons out, the more resolutions you get with FN's power action. And especially Sonic Detonators with that splash damage, it's very powerful. Now, if I'm against an aggressive deck, I don't typically like to do that. I'd like to activate Pyre, maybe see a resource first. Or maybe I will like to see a Merchant Freighter. Where's my Merchant Freighters? In my opening hand. That way I can tap my Jawa, play my Merchant Freighter. That way I'm setting myself up for extra resources in future rounds. Or if I have, fresh supplies, and basically what I'm trying to say is if I know I can make some extra money turn 1, that I can spend on both mitigation and a weapon, then I'm definitely going to try to play that weapon early on. Or if I have Measure for Measure, which is a 0 cost removal, and I know I can roll out Pyre, maybe he rolls a blank, or a less desirable side, then I will remove his die happily, to remove a 3 melee or a 4 for 1 or whatever it may be. And so that's really what I'm trying to do early on is just get a weapon on FN as soon as possible. Even if it's a Grievance Striker and that thing rolls out a one gun, right? It's obviously that's not as good as it could be. But if it rolls at its 2 indirect side, that's 2 indirect damage, right? And that will add up over the course of the game, especially whenever you get out Cruel Methods on people. When you get Cruel Methods out on, say, their big character, let's say you get it on Vader, every time you take control or claim, that's 1 indirect damage from Pyre, and then 1 direct damage to the attached character you play that on. And so it can really add up over the course of the game. And, with cards like Extermination Order, right? That's some extra damage out of hand. And so you're just trying to ping them throughout the course of the game. You're very happy to resolve Pyre's 1 gun if you roll it. Typically not discarding to reroll a lot in this deck. Almost every card in my hand I'm playing. In certain situations, right, in any deck you play, you have to ditch to reroll. But, happy to resolve a 1 gun. Obviously, a 2 gun is great. 2 for 1 gun, a lot of times I may not end up resolving that because the deck doesn't make a ton of money. And so I like to be able to hold on to some, money at times. So it really suffers, though, and this is where, again, it's not super competitive. It's just more of a fun, casual deck. It really suffers if it doesn't get a weapon turn 1. Which can happen because, admittedly, we only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 weapons, right? And of those 6 weapons, I really don't want to play this on FN, right? This I want to play on Pyre because this can take control of the battlefield. So, with a good mulligan and FN's After Effect to search the top 4 for a weapon, the odds are okay to get a weapon. And when it works, man, it works, and it's a lot of fun, and you can really race, your opponent and kill them potentially with some FN power actions and a lot of the indirect damage. So yeah, it's a lot of fun, and I really wanted to make this video just to, again, probably not my best deck, right? More of a casual fun deck, but just that thought process behind. Okay, here's 2 characters I really wanted to play because they got buffed recently. They're not as expensive as they used to be, right? Now 13 and 12. So that's 25 points elite for both of them. So, you could actually run this with Relentless Advance, the plot that accumulates damage, and then you can pop it to do a bunch of indirect damage all at once. So that's actually another way to do it. I did try that way, and I just didn't like it as much. I probably could try it again though. But the way I have it with those extra 5 points on my Jawa, now I've got 11 and 9. That's 20 health, so 25 health. It's not a whole lot, but man, it can really dish out the damage if you get the right cards and the right sequencing, and yeah, it just can be a blast. And so I'll just say one of my favorite things to do in the deck, and then we'll go ahead and close out. But so in a very good round for me with this deck, what I would like to do is power action FN and roll into the Sonic Detonators, for example, or even the Electro Sword, right? And hope that rolls one of the damage sides. And heck, even if the Sonic Detonators rolls a 2 disrupt or a 2 discard, I mean, it's not damage, but I'm typically pretty happy with that. That can be pretty devastating to my opponent. But hopefully it rolls damage, and so there's one bit of damage from FN's power action. And then what I'll do, my opponent takes an action, and it's back to me. Then I'll power action the battlefield, because typically with all these battlefield controlling cards, I will typically control the battlefield. So I typically have it, and I'm the one in control, and I can be the one to power action this thing for 2 actions. And so it's like a free instigate or a free seize the day. So you power action it. You have to give control of this to your opponent, right? But you get 2 actions. Next thing I'll do is I'll actually activate FN. Hopefully he's got some weapons on him. So that's more damage, right? I'm activating him, maybe rolling out his 3 for 1 side, or a 2 and a 2, or even a 1 and a maybe a 3 for 1 on here, or a 2 on here, whatever the case may be, right? Some amount of damage that I can resolve without it being mitigated. Then my opponent has the battlefield, right? Because I took 2 actions there. So there was some damage from his power action. There's some unmitigated damage from me taking 2 actions. Then my opponent has control of the battlefield. And then, I'll roll out Pyre, hopefully get some more damage out there as well. Maybe I'll have a chance to play some, an Extermination Order for some damage out of hand. And then what I like to do is, while they still have the battlefield,
I like to play one of these battlefield controlling cards. So then I take control, and that's going to do one indirect from Pyre and then one direct. Hopefully I've got Cruel Methods out. And then with the ambush action from taking charge or seizing territory, provided that it's the end of the round, I don't have anything to do anyway, I'll just then claim. So I've taken it back from the opponent, and then with the ambush I claim, and so that's basically 4 damage, right? For 2 from taking control in the middle of the round, and then 2 more from claiming. So it can just really add up, and a lot of times the way it feels is it's just a race, right? You're just flat out racing your opponent. You're using every last ounce of hit points you have on these characters to try to just do the damage. And sometimes it's actually come down to my Jawa, with the Grievance Straker on him that redeployed over to him, or an Electro Sword that redeployed over to him, and I've won games that way, right? It's pretty wild. It's pretty fun. So yeah, like I said, not the most competitive deck, but pretty fun there, and you can kind of see how it all fits together. Probably there's a way to add some more weapons in here. A notable card missing is FN's Riot Baton. It's just too expensive, right? It costs 3. There's no way to cheat it out with my Jawa. It is really good on FN, but it just didn't quite make the cut. And I'll probably make another deck with FN where I can run that card. So anyway, I hope that was enjoyable. Just sort of my thought process on how I made why number one, why I wanted to play these 2 characters in the first place, and then once I sort of looked at the math and decided, hey, there's a Jawa. How I sort of shaped the entire deck around that lineup. So again, when it clicks, it clicks. When it doesn't, it might get smashed. But it's fun. There's a lot of cool sequencing and a lot of damage out of hand you can do that your opponent just can't do anything about. So yeah, that's it, guys. I hope you enjoyed that. Thanks for watching my deck review or deck overview there. We'll try to bring you some more of these as sort of part of our How to Destiny series from everyone else. We'll look to have one hopefully from 86 and Drac and Duncan and Polly as well in the coming weeks. So hope you enjoyed that, and we will catch you next time. Thank you.